I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense of I was just who I was.
The cold exposure conditions the inside of our body to literally adapt.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Finding the grace and the humor.
Anti-aging is associated with at least an hour of deep sleep nightly.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Nothing starts without a plan, nothing ever goes to plan.
Chaga is actually the most antioxidant rich food on the planet.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable. I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
And Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. Awesome. Well, hey, Brian, welcome to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. It's so great to have you on. And for those of you who are listening and don't know Brian Richards, he is the founder of SaunaSpace, and we'll get into that here shortly. But Brian, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Jessica. It's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So we want to dive right into your story and talk about a little bit maybe uncomfortable, but I think diving right into some adversity that you faced in your entrepreneurial journey. And I think let's start from the beginning. Why did you decide to start this company, and where was your head when you started the company?
My head was full of fog, and a lot of I had a lot of health issues that were related to kind of a mosaic of symptoms that are all related to adrenal fatigue. I didn't know that was it at that time. I just was exiting my college career and still really young, even though I'm still young. But I was probably 23, 24 or something, and I didn't feel good. I had mind racing, brain fog. I basically, and I had a lot of insomnia type issues too. I would basically sit in bed and not be able to fall asleep. But not in a manic depressive way. I just had a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, and it would take a while to go to sleep. And I also had really weird acne that was restricted to my torso. It was actually clustered around my kidneys, strangely enough. And if you met me on the street, you'd think there was nothing wrong with me. Like, what's your problem, bro? Just get over it. Because, and that stuff's hard to diagnose anyway. But I started out with allopathic medicine, went to some doctors to get some advice. And at one point I was recommended to take Accutane. Accutane is an acne drug that's now been taken off the market because it's associated with liver cancer. It has a lot of other really disturbing side effects as well. So that was a shell shock for me. And I realized that I didn't want to take that approach, that, hey, maybe like many other things in my life, maybe I should just figure it out on my own and see what happens. So I do what like a lot of people do nowadays when they're dissatisfied with conventional medical approaches or that with recommendations that are not serving or don't think they serve them, is they get online and they start searching and looking at what are other people doing and what is out there in the world. Thank goodness the internet is still free and you can still find things, although that seems to change every day. And so I began a journey of research, and I kept coming back to sauna in my research. And I was researching blogs and alternative healthcare practitioner approaches, but also I was in the PubMed reading the actual white papers and reading the heavy stuff too. I kept coming back to sauna. Sauna is one of the most widely studied alternative therapies that for which there is published research in the PubMed. It's one of the almost widely studied of all alternative therapies. And there's some amazing research in there that essentially, with human studies and long-term studies, we're seeing reduction in all-cause mortality, reduction in risk of disease X, Y, and Z, you name it, stroke, heart attack, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. It seems to be hitting everything. And then I also noticed that every human culture on earth has some kind of sauna tradition. So we both have a modern evidentiary approach confirming that sauna is working. We also have like 2,000 years or more of sauna tradition one way or another. The Celts, the Irish had little sauna caves, and we know the sweat lodges of the Native Americans, the Korean hot pools. So this concept of heating the body up in a passive state, doing full body hyperthermic therapy goes back a long time. And so it all made sense to me. My problem is toxicity, and I need a detox, and I need to use a sauna. At the end of the research, I discovered through Dr. Lawrence Wilson's book, another doctor who you may be familiar with, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, as in the Kellogg's cornflakes guy. So he was considered to be a little crazy, but he also had a lot of avant-garde therapies that he was offering in his Battle Creek, Michigan sanitarium in the early 20th century. So it turns out 3 years after incandescent light bulbs were invented, that was 1887. So in 1891, Dr. Kellogg comes on and says, holy cow, let's use these light bulbs for a sauna. There's something special about this light. It's going to be better than a regular sauna. So he built his own. It was called the electric incandescent light bath, invented in 1891. And then for the first 8 years of the 20th century, in a matter of years, he ran over 50,000 invalid patients. Invalids is a word that is not appropriate to use nowadays, but that was historically used for people who had chronic illness, a chronic disease of some kind. He resoundingly had amazing healing stories and cured almost everything he could come up against in this period from 1900 to 1906, whatever it was. 50,000 patients, over 200,000 sauna sessions in his electric incandescent light bath. And he wrote a book on it in 1910 called Light Therapeutics by Dr. Kellogg. So there's an understanding that there's something special coming out of the incandescent lamp that's not just heat. There's some kind of light interaction with the body that's going on. Mm-hmm. And then this sauna concept was forgotten, basically. With the rise of the American Medical Association in the 30s, you had pretty much the elimination of all the alternative cancer treatment clinics and other alternative medical clinics that were widespread across the United States. They also pretty much destroyed chiropractics entirely. And that took until the 70s to come back to the United States. So during this time, it was all forgotten. And so I discovered, though, in this modern doctor, Dr. Wilson's book, a model to make this electric incandescent light bath. So I built my own. It essentially is powered by 3 or 4 250-watt red-colored heat lamps. Like grandpa's heat lamps, what people had in their bathrooms a long time ago. So I built my bricolage little setup. It was really, really fugly. It had chicken wire, plastic plumbing pipe, and it was 2 painter's cloths from Home Depot. And I basically had an amazing healing experience. I used it 2 sessions before bed, and my insomnia was cured in my mind. And that was a shocker to me, and that gave me motivation to use it with discipline 4 or 5 days a week for 6 months. And at the end of that, it was only then that I realized that I actually had brain fog. It was easy to see, my insomnia is gone, I sleep better. But when my acne started to clear up, my skin started to get better, I noticed all of a sudden, wow, there's a lot of things that were wrong with me that were corrected at the same time. I was more clear-minded. I was more decisive, more able to concentrate, less irascible, more patience just with everybody, including my mother, with whom I still have patience issues. But it was just a qualitative improvement in my health. And I was so blown away by it that I wanted to help bring this to others. And so I made some for some friends and some family. And then I realized there's no product available. There's no commercial product. All the saunas out there are using different technology. They're actually using not this technology, they're using far infrared technology, or the standard Finnish sauna uses a big electric heater. But the world's first electric powered sauna was the incandescent sauna. So I basically decided, hey, there's no product here available on the market. I'm going to make it. I'm going to bring it. I'm going to make it awesome. I'm going to do this one thing right. And that was the inspiration for the formation of SaunaSpace in 2013. I don't have any business background or any business training. I just knew that this thing was special and people needed to try it out. And it turns out it is a lot more effective of a sauna. It layers on top this concept of light therapy, photobiomodulation, adds it in, so you get like a double whammy. And then it turns out it's actually more accessible for people because the air temperature is a lot lower because we're using the radiant heat. So people with neuropathies, weak, feeble people, older people can sit in the sauna because it's only 105 degrees and still get this awesome sweat response and the benefits that are derived thereof. And then also I was like, this needs to be in every home. Of course, my goal is to have one in every home in the world. And so I focused a lot on the design too, to make it just fit everywhere, more portable, more light. People always complain about those box saunas, how darn big they are, how heavy they are. Like you have to sell it basically when you move. I wanted something more minimalist, more sexy, more accessible, more universal. And that's what I wanted, in 2013. What we offer today is very close to what I envisioned. That took a long time to develop. But we could talk about that. That was some of the most exciting stuff happened in the course of the product development and the development of the business, where I didn't know what I was doing, but I wanted to learn how to do it right. I've always been kind of autodidactic. So I started reading books on business, like The E-Myth was a great book, and The Ultimate Sales Machine. And there's this book, The Who Interview, and how to interview people, in a systematic fashion for hiring. And I poured my life into it. And then later I got into other concepts, like I mentioned, I think in our discovery call, Jessica, spiral dynamics and Frederick, what's his face, is reinventing organizations. And while I was doing that, I was also developing the product in a very iterative, anal fashion over, again and again and again, and just introducing new concepts. And at the same time, having to figure out how to make it. In the beginning, I did everything, I made it all of it. But slowly but surely, we've scaled. We have 35 employees now, and we have a lot of automation in place, and we have a really interesting blend of doing a lot of, it's a very handcrafted product. So it's all handmade here in Columbia, Missouri. But we also leverage a lot of modern technology to keep our labor costs down, because labor is very expensive in the United States. And we're totally competing with, lower cost, lower value alternatives that are coming from Vietnam. And it's just a kind of a full assault on many different planes and many different avenues to keep it all running. And it's like hundreds of balls being juggled in the air, and always something drops, but you try to make it not be too big of a deal. And at the same time that you trying to systemize things, it's important to keep fresh and be adaptable. And remember that we're never satisfied with what we have now. We always want to try to make it better.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love the story where you kind of said enough is enough, and I need to create something here because this is not available, and this helped me in so many ways. So I love the service mentality there in terms of your entrepreneurship. I want to kind of go a little bit, and Svetlana, I know you'd love to kind of go a little bit deeper. I want to go back, kind of rewind to before you started the company. Where did you grow up? What was your childhood like? And were you always into health and wellness, or was it this, all of those things that you mentioned, the acne, the fog, things like that kind of triggered you into that? Tell us a little bit more about your childhood and how you grew up, and maybe how you kind of came to that realization.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have any health problems growing up. That all onset really quickly. I attribute that to basically burning the candle at both ends. And you can do that when you're 12, and you can do that when you're 16. But once you're 24 and you don't sleep and you don't emphasize what you put inside your body, different people have different breaking points, different tolerances. And for me, it was it was too much. But I didn't have any of those issues really growing up. I grew up in Montana. So I grew up in a small town called Great Falls in Montana. It's the Great Falls of the Missouri, where Lewis and Clark kind of went through, and that's about all it's known for. It's an interesting place. I read recently that the population of Great Falls has not increased or decreased by more than 10,000 people in like 100 years. So it's not going away, but it's it's fine where it is. Anyway, I had a wonderful upbringing. Doing a lot of stuff outdoors, as you can imagine, the Big Sky State, all kinds of outdoor sports and hiking and hunting and fishing and swimming and all those awesome things. And I was always very, very right-brained. I was always a very science and math guy. I skipped ahead in my science class and my math class too, and finished calculus early when I was in my third year of high school. I was always trying to. I get that A-type drive, I think, from my dad. I was always trying to be the best, and there's some ego involved in that, and I'm, we all are working on our ego, certainly. But I was always driven, and I always like captain of the soccer team, and I always tried to get the best grades and all straight A's and stuff. But it was an ego thing, which is unfortunate. It should have been for the pure value of the education itself. But that's how I grew up, really driven, and had a wonderful upbringing there, skied, hiked, everything. And when I wanted to go to college, I applied to a bunch of different places, but I ended up getting a full ride presidential scholarship offer from Montana State, even though Montana State's not so exciting. And so I was like, fine, I'll go there. It's free. My first year there was great educationally, and it was a nightmare socially. It ended up being kind of a extension of high school, still the weird click stuff from high school. Bozeman, Montana, where MSU is based, is actually majority male population. So, I was like a scrawny guy. I'm still a scrawny guy, but it wasn't, even if the odds are even, it's the cards are weighted against me, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't have fun at parties, didn't have the social experience that was described to me as happening in college, this sort of flowering of one's, soul and spirit and so forth. So I have an older brother who studied abroad. So he's like, dude, just get out of there. Go study abroad, go to Spain. So I did that. And that my entire life changed when I did that. So I went to Spain on a study abroad, but I ended up living with a Colombian guy and a German guy and a Belgian chick, and didn't speak a lick of English for 10 months, became fluent in Spanish culture, ended up coming back at the end of the things and got a whole second degree in Spanish literature. But when I was there, before I left, my brother's like, dude, there's clubs and there's no curfews. You need to have some club shoes and some club clothes. And so I went into my dad's old trunk and got all these button-down sexy shirts from the 70s that didn't really fit, but they were pink and purple, and there's some silk shirts. I got myself what I consider to be club shoes, which weren't, but something not sneakers. And I went there, and the first night I got there, it freaked me out. Everybody was speaking in Spanish. I didn't know anything. I didn't study Spanish previously. I like a little bit in high school, but I basically knew nothing. I didn't take any college Spanish. And I just was like, okay, man, you can do this. Just go for it. Just be yourself. Just see what happens. And I basically wiped my slate clean and started acting naturally as I felt, in terms of being extroverted, being engaging, just talking to everybody, whether you're a girl or a guy, and without any discrimination, and being open to all experiences. And it was a strange thing that happened. Like I said, I was always a go-getter in high school and when I was younger, but I wasn't necessarily the most popular person. I was just really smart and good at the schoolwork, but not in the popular group at all. And I had this strange experience. All of a sudden there were women asking me out, and I was wearing the clothes, and I was looking good. And then it wasn't hard for me anymore. And it's not like the entirety of my experience was focused on, you know, sexuality or that sort of thing. It was just, I was, you know, I basically was manifesting the person I wanted to be, and everybody was accepting that around me. And they're like, yeah, I want to, and then people were calling me up to hang out. And I developed my adult social skills a lot better there. I found myself there. I found that I liked myself, and I was happy with myself, and other people were happy with me being me, and not me trying to pose or be someone who wasn't me. And so I had this huge, this huge shift in my mindset there, and I knew I couldn't go back to Bozeman. So I was like, well, I just had the most amazing 10 months. I'm not going back to America. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I kind of went like this on the map, and I was like, well, Russia is too cold. Nope, it's too cold. I was like, well, I wanted to learn a non-European language, a non-Roman language. So then I was like, well, maybe Arabic. But you can't really party and go out with girls in most Arabic countries. It's just not as fun. The Far East for me was too exotic and too weird. So my mother's Jewish. She's like, well, what about Israel? So I was like, And I checked it out, and it was kind of the blend of everything. It's a Semitic language, so it's not a Roman language, but it's very westernized. Tel Aviv is like totally like New York, but everything's in Hebrew, and everybody's jibber-jabbering in Hebrew. And it's a very safe place. And I have a little bit of tie-in with my Jewish heritage, even though I'm pretty secular. I don't practice. So I went there. And I went there on a 6-month language study program that evolved into 3.5 years of being there. And I kept finding excuses to do independent study. And so I learned Hebrew fluently, had so many amazing experiences there, including, you know, crazy trance parties in the wilderness and working illegally as a waiter, getting cash tips. I worked at this fried chip stand, and I literally had and I was making $4.25 an hour, and I had my tip jar stolen like 2 or 3 times. And since I was working illegally, my boss was this half Dutch, half Israeli guy. And he was just a real jerk. And he loved the power relationship of being able to lord over this punk little American. And so I would be there just like trying to prep the chips, and he would call up on the phone and be monitoring on the cameras abroad, and he would criticize me and yell at me for only washing the lettuce 2 times instead of 3 times. Like, it was really dehumanizing. But in all of that, you know, there's a lot of character growth. And I think it was something I really needed. I strongly urge anyone who's grew up in America to do that, to go out of your comfort zone, be in a situation where there's people who are 6 years old laughing at you because you can't pronounce things right, and people who don't even have time for you because you can't say what you need to say quickly enough, and to be uncomfortable and to be forced to deal with that, and to deal with yourself and build like the self-reliance that comes from that.
Yeah. I love that story, Brian. I love that. And I studied Spanish language and literature in college, and ended up living in Peru for a while after I graduated. And so I totally understand where you're coming from with going to a different place, getting out of your comfort zone, feeling that uncertainty. And Svetlana, I know that you are, you're Jewish. So I'm not sure if you ever went to
Israel. Yeah, I've been there. I went on the birthright trip. Have you heard of those, Brian? They give birthright trips.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't go on a birthright trip.
Well, actually, I went with a fun group, so it was good. But no, I went. I've been there once. It was pretty awesome, but it was too fast. You know what I mean? Because the thing about birthright is like you're literally up at 6:37 every day, and then you're done by like 10 p.m. So you don't really get to just soak it all in. So,
yeah, you need to live there to get it. Like Jessica said, you know, you go, you live there. that's so much different than doing a 2-week tour or something else. You get to feel, you make friendships, and you kind of put down roots, so to speak. So it was amazing. I didn't want to come back, but income tax rates are up to 60% in Israel. There is no small business administration. There's no capital. There's no business opportunities for me there. And so the most exciting thing, though, that happened in Israel for me was that I met my future wife there. And it was, you want to hear it? It's a pretty cool little story.
Let's hear it.
So I'll try to make it quick. So at the end of my career there, I was studying at a Hebrew language instruction liberal arts college that was focused on Hebrew, Jewish literature, Hebrew language and stuff, all secular, all really fun. And she was there. And she was this super beautiful, philosophy major person, a little bit older than me, and also a yoga teacher. And I asked her out probably 5 times or 6 times, and she thought I was gay because I had curly hair down to my shoulders. It was all blonde. I was in Israel, so I wear tank tops every day, shorts every day, because I grew up in Montana. But it was just I kind of had a little bit of a flamer look, I guess, in retrospect. Although I didn't feel like that, and certainly I'm not. But anyway, I actually had this little bit of a knee injury in Israel, and I was recommended to go to Iyengar style yoga, and I started going to that, and I got a lot of improvement. And that's its own wonderful story. I totally recovered. But in the midst of it, my therapeutic teacher said, you need to bring in an assistant to help. And I was like, well, I'm not going to ask my guy friends to come and roll my thighs back while I'm, doing all these poses. I just thought that would be imposing too much. But I realized that this girl, this woman, Netta, taught Iyengar yoga. So I played a little trick on her. I was like, look, I want you to come be my assistant in this class. I was learning at the competition studio across the town from her studio. So she was interested. She was game. She came to the class. She did the assistant work. And then afterwards I said, well, you have to let me cook you dinner since you did this. And it slowly kind of dominoed from there. And I cooked her dinner, and then we started hanging out, and we really connected. And then finally she invited me on a real date to a reggae discotheque, and then the rest is history. And it was an interesting story because at the end of it, I still didn't want to go back to Montana, and I couldn't stay in Israel for many reasons. And so I decided to do one last study abroad in Valencia, Spain. And she came with me, and I looked at her and I was like, look, this is going to be our crucible, as cheesy as this sounds. You're not from Spain. I'm not from Spain. If we can live together for a year and still be cool, then that's it. We're made for each other. And so we did that, and it worked out. And so she came. The next step was to come to America, and the easiest way to do it was a fiancé visa. I had no plans to get married. She wasn't really interested in that either, but that was the quickest, easiest way for her to get her into America. And so we did that, and we made an agreement. Look, this is just going to be a 3-year renewable contract. All right. If you don't like it and I don't like it, we're done after 3 years. And so we've been married now, I think 13 years. And so we've renewed 3 times now, or 3 or 4 times. And it's still been great. We've managed to keep it really fresh, but that was, I wouldn't be here today if not for her. She supports me in everything and she's allowed me to do this crazy SaunaSpace thing, and she's never interfered once. And sometimes it's been quite stressful, a lot of challenges and a lot of kind of nail biting decisions had to be made. And she's just always supported me. So I had so many amazing things, and that was the most amazing thing in Israel. And that all changed my life, and now I'm coming back to America, and I'm fluent in 2 languages. I could totally give a damn about chemistry. My major was chemistry. I finished it anyway. I think that was an ego thing again, just because I started it, I would have to finish it. So I finished that, and I almost applied to medical school I did actually apply to medical schools because my parents are doctors, and I couldn't figure out what the hell to do. So I'll do that, and at least I can make a lot of money and then do what I really want to do. A terrible decision. But then I was in a medical school interview at Vanderbilt University, where my folks actually went to medical school. And she was asking me questions, and in the middle of it, I was like, in the middle of talking to the interviewer, I realized that I had no business being there. And I walked out of the interview and called my father up and said, I'm sorry that I asked you to buy that suit for me, and I will be paying you back for it, but I don't need it, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not doing this. And just to give you the story up until SaunaSpace, my wife and I went and moved to Champaign-Urbana and did 1 year where she studied with her yoga teacher there, a really famous Iyengar teacher, Lois Steinberg. And then we moved to where I live now in Columbia, Missouri, because my parents had moved here a long time ago. And I wanted to be close to my parents for the sake of my children that I didn't have yet. But also it was a business opportunity. Do you guys remember the crash of 2008?
Oh, yeah.
So crashed everywhere, Columbia as well. All the houses were extremely, decreased prices. So I started a fixer-upper business with my dad, and we bought 2 or 3 houses, and I fixed them up and started renting them out. And I thought I was going to build this amazing empire of all these rentals and be this awesome landlord. And I didn't think about the human component of being a landlord. I don't have the emotional constitution for it at all, like demanding the money from people and just all of that. And I would fix things up beautifully, and only to have them totally trashed, like in 1 semester. And so I was like, well, this is nice to have one for an investment, but I can't do this either. And that was right in the midst of that is when I started having the health issues kind of that started in Champaign-Urbana, but became more severe in Columbia. And I had my my awakening healing wise, and then started SaunaSpace, and I was still doing the fixer upper stuff, and I started SaunaSpace, and I was making these saunas in my house in the back bedroom, and people were paying me up front, and I would send them a sauna, and they were extremely satisfied. They would call up and say, "This changed my life. It's so amazing." And that experience, that gives you that gratitude is so, what's the word? Gratifying. It's just, it makes you feel so good that there was no question that the universe was telling me, you need to do this, man. Forget about those houses, make these saunas. It was a perfect fit. And I dove into it and poured my whole heart and soul into it for, now 6 or 7 years. And it was the right decision. I don't know what is going on exactly, but I feel like I'm channeling something in the universe. There's definitely some times where things have been really hard. This one time, twice I almost went bankrupt. I had to borrow some money from my mom one time. That was one of the most humiliating things I've ever done. I paid her back. We're good now. All the business loans are paid off, but it definitely has been a totally wild ride. And it seems like in these moments where there's no other answer and you're at the cliff's edge, a solution has always presented itself in the business, whether, we're talking about production challenges or marketing or HR, whatever. What's the phrase? Necessity is the mother of invention. So it always seemed to work out just in time. And it's always been like that. I've always been flying by the seat of my pants, but things are increasingly more systematized and less stressful. But it definitely, there's definitely someone rooting for us out there, I think.
Well, I'm rooting for you for sure, Brian. And so the reason why we originally got connected is because I have a photon light. Can you hold yours up don't you have it right next to you? Yeah.
I got it right here.
Oh yeah. Look at that, baby. Yes.
Woo,
yes.
woo.
So I have a photon light. It's done wonders for me in terms of fatigue. I had some skin issues as well that I was working through, some eczema. And I was doing a lot of sauna research. So I kind of went down this rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And you're right. There are not a lot of products out there that are kind of along the lines of like essentialist or minimalist type of a smaller, You can have it at your desk, easy to use, not clunky. You don't have to, invest in an entire sauna that if you move, you have to leave behind. All of that stuff came into play. And I couldn't find anything. And so I started doing research on your company and ended up investing in the Photon just to say, okay, let me give this a try. Let me see if this is actually all it's cracked up to be after reading all the reviews and everything. And I had such a positive experience. And so obviously, that's why I wanted to connect with you. And so I want to maybe segue through, starting your business, everything that led up to you creating SaunaSpace and all the hardships you faced, all the adversity, all the uncertainty, the bankruptcy, everything that you faced creating the company. I kind of want to shift now into more of the health benefits of the near infrared sauna therapy. And, I think it is alternative medicine. It's holistic. And I do think it's the future. I'm totally on board with you. But I wanna maybe go into this journey of how your health has optimized and how it's maybe continued to inspire you to create more and be in this place of service. Because there's so many things that are listed, on your site and through reviews and testimonials as to what red light therapy can do for you. So I want to kind of dive into those, and maybe we can start with, since you mentioned acne, I had some skin things that I was going through. Maybe we can start with, its work on skin purification and rejuvenation and kind of go from there.
Yeah, skin is one of the most widely studied tissue types for low-level light therapy. So this is called low-level light therapy because originally they were using laser beams, and they found out, wow, those are too strong. They burn, they cause thermal damage. But when they started to match either with lasers or now also with LEDs or also incandescents, low power levels, very similar to the wattage of near infrared you get from the sun, they found that it was all goodness. It was all good. And the way it's all good is because it triggers a thing called the mitochondrion that we have in every cell of the body except red blood cells. So they're in your skin, but they're also in your gut and your nerves and your brain and your kidneys. You name the tissue type. Inside of your bones, you have mitochondria. So the mitochondria has a little light receptor protein on it. And it turns out that humans are like plants, but just a different biological mechanism, but we basically eat light for energy and for healing. And so when you shine the particular wavelength of light, it has to be red or near infrared. It's a really tight band, and you can look that up on sauna.space. It promotes anti-aging, regenerative effects, inflammatory reduction effects, and also gene transcription correction effects, as well as like immediate direct effects, like it boosts your cell metabolism, which gives you energy without sugar. And it has a nitric oxide release out of the cell. So it causes vasodilation. It gets the NO cycle going, which is all this amazing biological stuff. So that's all like in the weeds of it. But to sum all that up, you get a beneficial corrective optimizing effect in the cell when this shines on it. So with the skin, you get rejuvenation of the skin, and with the bones, you promote bone growth because near infrared light is the only wavelengths that have been shown to penetrate bone tissue, and it makes sense. You have mitochondria inside your bone tissue, and if you look at the sun, if you combine red light and near infrared, that comprises over 51% of the sun's emission. So the majority of the sun's emission are in the wavelength band that stimulates the mitochondria and heals us. And also, if you look at what get the wavelengths of the sun that get through the atmosphere, these all get through the atmosphere. And so our exposure to it, evolutionarily speaking, was daily, and we got this daily dose. And it just has a general healing effect, a general reoptimizing effect. So people are seeing their skin clear up. They're using red light therapy for reduction of neuropathies, for recovery from stroke, from TBI, traumatic injuries. It's being used for chronic pain. And And then it's also being used for these diseases of civilization that are so ambiguous and intractable and hard to deal with, like depression, MS, fibromyalgia, you name it.
I've even heard of
like PCOS and go ahead.
I was going to say I've even heard of people using it for like cellulite and increasing fat burning type of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a great point. That's really relevant to the skin. So near infrared and red light naturally increase our natural collagen production. So it's a great one. Cellulite, which is a very superficial thing, but it's one of the biggest complaints actually out there. Cellulite is fat that pops up out of the skin because the collagen scaffolding system is not holding it in place correctly because the collagen is broken down and certain peptides are not available. And so you can, it's well known that you can massage cellulite to reduce visible cellulite. But if you combine that with red light therapy and first expose the tissue to, like the photon, and then do a massage with the fascia blaster or something like that, the results are a lot more dramatic. And that's because it's helping rebuild and regenerate and rejuvenate, as does the massage. And the massage has lymphatic activation, which helps detox. And all these things we're talking about are all just light therapy. So we're not talking about sauna. But what we do here at SaunaSpace is we've combined the two. And even with your photon, your photon's not a sauna. So you don't get a full body sweat response. You're not doing the full body holistic therapy. You're doing more of a targeted therapy. But still that heat has, though it's involving different biological systems, they overlap and the benefits really overlap. It's really interesting. So sauna also increases tissue oxygenation, increases blood flow to tissues without increasing blood pressure. It also improves overall nervous system functioning, but so does red light. So if you shine red light and that's why it's effective for TBI and stuff. If you shine it on the nerve cells, they regenerate both within themselves and over time you get improved functioning of their overall nervous system and the neural tree. And you have some of those benefits from sauna as well. And you see that really the two go hand in hand. And then if you look from an evolutionary perspective, it's really an alliance of light and heat from the sun. You never had heat without light or light without heat. You can have that nowadays because you can buy like a LED red light therapy panel and just get the light therapy. And you could also do like a Finnish sauna that's only heat. But OG, original light therapy and heat therapy was from the sun. And so there's definitely some synergies that are going on there. And there are even particular biological mechanisms that clearly require both light and near infrared light and heat to function optimally. And if you could do the both together, well, why not? And it turns out when you do them together, it seems to be addressing more than one of the other can do on its own.
Yeah.
Some of the go ahead.
Yeah, I think too, I want to touch on muscle recovery and athletic performance and things like that, because that was also a huge interest for me when I first bought my photon and really kind of getting into the sauna world. But a lot of our listeners are interested in peak performance, biohacking. How can they kind of cut to the chase and really get to the meat of things? And I think that, in addition to skin and in addition to all these things that it does, it also can create, that faster muscle recovery. It's almost like, the antithesis to going in a cold plunge. You're using the heat, you're using the light as this other type of improved athletic performance. So I wanted to mention that too, and not sure if you have any more information on kind of athletes and how they're using your products.
Yeah, I mean, I have a nice article where I touch on a lot of points, but it is too much to talk about, shortly. But essentially, the sauna helps you detox lactic acid and helps heal the muscle fiber tearing that occurs when you work out strong. So your recoveries are reduced, and your injuries are reduced. And the injuries you get you recover from them faster. I have an ultra marathon runner, Anthony Kunkel, who used the photon he ripped his quad. He's an ultra marathon runner, right? So he ripped his quad and he just actually overused the photon on it, but he decreased the diagnosed expected recovery was going to be 8 weeks, and he was back out and running in 2.5 weeks, which is stunning for a pro athlete. That's amazing. So just from a recovery standpoint and complementing your workout so you get the maximal benefit in the workout, yeah, it's absolutely there. You see that. You see that's supported in the light therapy research and in the sauna research. But it's not just about that physical stuff. And I think we should touch on that because we're talking about skin. We're talking about everything I mentioned so far. I've talked about more kind of on the physiological plane. Let's talk about the spiritual, mental, psychological plane. Sauna improves cognitive functioning. It means your brain works better. When your brain works better, it improves your performance in all things, whether it's business or love or life or working out or playing a baseball game. Your response times are quicker. Your ability to decide is quicker. And that indecisiveness, I think that a lot of people experience. Well, what should I do? What should I do? There's a certain mental state you get into. Surely you've heard of people referring to like flow state or whatever. You get in the zone and you're in that and you feel it. And sometimes you get that. You can achieve that in many ways, through meditation. People have different practices to get there. What's cool about, using SaunaSpace is you get there without doing anything. It puts you in that state. So for me, I'm one of the most frequent users of the product. I've been using it since day one, like many days a week for many, many years now. For me, if I don't use this, my sauna in the morning before work, my brain feels like it's at about 80% or 85%. If I use it in the morning and then I follow up with like a fat coffee, just like a non-carb type breakfast, which actually I was drinking a little bit more right now. I just find that I'm much more effective. I perform much better in all aspects of my day, and my day is really chaotic and busy with a lot of challenges and working on a lot of fronts. But I get through it, and I don't have to eat anything till 2, and I don't feel drained or hypoglycemic. And more than that, I feel like it has a calibrating influence on my desire to be healthy. So if I do sauna in the morning, I don't, even if I stayed up late or I drank some beers and had a party or something, I'm less inclined to go for that croissant. Sometimes I maintain a pretty paleo diet overall, but I like to be naughty sometimes and get a big old greasy ham and cheese croissant. And you know how that is. It's just, there's something about it. But I'll find that when I do sauna in the morning, I don't go for that. I don't want to do that. I want to eat healthy. I want to go home. I want to be on time. I want to make my commitments and follow through. And so that renewal effect is so, there's nothing else I've ever done that's ever given me that other than a fat-based diet. And then if those of you out there who really like to biohack, if you combine this with intermittent fasting, it's like nirvana. It's amazing. Now, all this takes a lot of discipline, but using the sauna, it's so easy to use it passively or even more so with the photon. And you'll find that it gives you a discipline bonus. It's helping you with your discipline. I guess that's what I'm getting at. It makes me more disciplined when I use it. And all of that are all these like hard to articulate qualitative improvements in your mood and your psyche and your personality that are invaluable. And I it's not just me that's had that experience. It's so many people. Of course, if you're totally broken down and toxic and sick, you want to take care of that immediate, huge problem. But you'll find these other things will resolve, and you'll find it continually. It's a renewal thing. So I do it for maintenance, yes, and you do need to use it, for it to work. Just like you need to eat right and have that discipline each day. But you find that it becomes almost automatic the more you get into it, because it feels really good to be healthy, to be clean, and to be clear-headed. It just feels so good. It's so empowering that even if you're struggling with, depression issues or maybe addiction issues or the rest, it's this, it's this angel on your side helping you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And going along, kind of pairing with that, the mindfulness, all of these things kind of coming full circle. we also talked a little bit about it earlier, but it improves your sleep quality. So I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people have, stress leaks into having poor sleep quality, leaks into having a poor focus and mentality throughout the day. So this comes full circle. This isn't just mindfulness, biohacking, muscle recovery, skin rejuvenation. It actually improves your sleep as well, which is specifically linked in studies on the science side to longevity for your life. So I think that it just comes full circle with detox and all of the things you mentioned. So I appreciate you kind of giving a rundown on every.
Yeah, and that's something that people see usually the most immediate improvement on is sleep quality and skin issues. And I used my sauna right before bed, which I recommend for people with sleep issues. People nowadays we're overstimulated. You have this concept of fight or flight, rest and digest. So the nervous system, the ancestral human's nervous system was in rest and digest 90% of the day. Nowadays, the modern human, it's totally flipped. By the time before you even get to work, you're already in sympathetic dominance in the fight or flight. And then you remain in that all day. When you remain in that high stress state all day, your body's continually producing stress, cortisol and stress molecules and basically being in this hyperactive state that's not natural to be in that majority of the day. And so when you get home and you're like laying in bed after you blasted yourself with blue light because you just watched a movie on your phone, after dark, which you shouldn't be doing anyway, of course your body's not ready for sleep. And then when you sleep, and if you measure your sleep, it's like a flat line. You don't have any non-REM sleep and your REM sleep's short. And of course it affects your entire next day, your entire life, all of your health. It's something it's one of the biggest complaints that people have is I can't sleep well. And it's not just, how soft your mattress is or whether it's, got coils or not. There's definitely an EMF issue too. And we tried to address that really as best we can with our product design. But I mean, EMF, modern radiation is just another source where we live in a very toxic world of overstimulus where we have no places of quiet. We have very non-ideal diet, very artificial relationship to light, all this artificial blue light. We're indoors. We're not outside. We don't wake up with the sun, go sleep with it. I mean, everything is totally, out of sync with our biology. And our biology wants what it had 10,000 years ago. It doesn't want all this modern stuff. So if we're not going to live out there, we're not going to return to nature and live like some hermit or go live like some people in the Stone Age culture. I don't want to do that. I need to be here to be able to help others. So I think the answer is to bring nature to us. So the photon light inside and this concept of sauna and light and getting the daily dose of near-infrared light that you would normally get from the sun, running naked under the sun as our ancestors did. This is the way to, I think, and I'm not a healthcare provider, this is just my opinion, but I think it's a one-stop rejuvenation machine, and you get in and you do 20 minutes and it's the best 20 minutes you could possibly spend if you have the sauna. If not, the photon's great. And it turns out that people are using the photon too. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Jessica, but you can use it for those targeted areas, and that's its classical use. But it's also like I'm using it right now. It's just in my office here, not pointed at me. It's just in the office, in the close vicinity, just like you would use a fireplace. Wouldn't you like to have a fireplace on all day next to you? Well, it turns out you get light therapy from the fireplace. It's part of the positive mood influence it has on you. And you can do the same thing with the photon because it cancels, the red light is an antidote to blue. It cancels out, or it reverses some of the effects of the blue light damage that occurs from, all of your digital screens and your LED and fluorescent lights. And it also cancels out the measurable flickering effect of modern lighting. Almost all modern lighting flickers, and that's associated with a lot of problems, a lot of health issues, and the general discomfort that you have working at the computer all day, right? And it counteracts that too. So all these things matter. All these subtle details of our artificial life that we have now all matter. They all adversely influence our health. And one or another thing is no big deal, but all of them together are basically resulting in a tidal wave of toxicity that we're inundated with. And it's no coincidence that we're one of the sickest countries on earth, even though we have all the resources and all the knowledge, supposedly. We're collectively, I don't want to speak for anybody because I was the same before all this, but collectively we're still really ignorant with regard to how to maintain our health with the best value, by which I mean high benefit, low risk. We're using that approach with, when you go buy an iPhone case and anything else you buy, but all of a sudden kind of our consumer logic is suspended when, we want to spend money on health products or services. And I'm not throwing out conventional medicine at all. It has an incredibly important role. The trauma response of conventional medicine is stunning, and it has a huge role in our life. But I think the truth is, for most of the diseases of civilization we have and the basic chronic pain and other stuff we have, there's a really simple solution here that's much cheaper and much safer. But it's a matter of awareness and understanding. The medical doctor nowadays is kind of like the modern priest in his white frock. He comes to you and he tells you how it is, and you accept. And there's that whole crazy placebo effect. Have you ever seen some of those placebo studies where there's like this one study where they tell the people that they have cancer, even if they don't, and their hair turns white? That's because, we're not just biochemical beings. We're bioelectric beings. We can limbically regulate each other's brains and influence each other. And the fundamental basis of our existence is definitely quantum mechanical. It's just like electric, and it's all connected. It's not all discrete. It's all connected together. So for me, it makes sense that you can't just deal with one thing. You have to deal with everything. But everybody asks, like, what is the gadget? What is the one thing I can do to fix everything? There really isn't a panacea quite out there, but if you want one thing that non-specifically improves and rejuvenates the health of every cell and every cell type in your body, and subsequently tisular and systemic systems, it's totally what we're doing here.
Well, there's like a couple of things that I wanted to touch on that you brought up way back earlier in the conversation. Well, first of all, when you said that originally you got into this because you had brain fog and you were experiencing adrenal fatigue. I've been there, and I'm currently feel like I'm a little bit back there because I think it has something to do with I just had a baby 8 months ago, so my sleep is like totally like screwed up. So I'm definitely experiencing the brain fog, which is why I was like, oh, I'm really excited to talk to you, because I'm like, I've been really interested in the products that you have, because I mean, I can feel, I'm pretty in tune with my body and understanding, like, okay, I'm pretty sure there's some thyroid stuff going on. And I'm pretty sure that I have some iron, my iron's a little deficient, which I'm working on. And then you also said something, and I'm going to touch, because I remember these things, they're important. When you said that you wiped the slate clean, which I thought was really cool just for our listeners, because, it's kind of like letting our listeners know that you get to be whoever you want to be, and you decided to be yourself, right? Like whoever you've always wanted to be, which is usually like, just being you and being true to yourself and authentic. So I thought that was really admirable. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to touch on that, and there was something else that, like I said, there's some brain fog going on. So, there's something else that you just mentioned that'll come to me, but, I'll touch, those are the main points that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah. You're not alone in dealing with postpartum issues. I think everybody who goes through that deals with that
You have
to
people
varying
that come to
degrees.
you with that, like, oh, hey, I'm going through some postpartum fatigue. I have brain fog. Can this help me?
Well, you could try blaming it on the COVID, but
I can't blame it on COVID.
yeah, It's probably related to the delivery and the pregnancy and all that. That's an incredibly stressful experience.
Yeah.
At the same time that it's, a glorious, transcendental experience. But you definitely kind of leach out everything out of your body and give it to your newborn.
I know.
And so after that, you need to rebuild at the same time that you still need to give them so much if you're choosing to breastfeed, and then you're still like giving them everything you got. And so, yeah, this would be really relevant for that. It's not contraindicated for breastfeeding. It is technically contraindicated for pregnancy because we don't have studies on that. And like so many things, you just have to say that. There are pregnant women who just use like the photon and, on their feet or on their head or just gently. If you want to use it to improve your mood, it's just using it for like 5 or 10 minutes on your head or your throat, and just do that a little bit. And you can do that up to 10 times a day, just a little 10 minutes.
Do you have kids? Because you mentioned something earlier about how you had this, vision of you and your wife having kids when you were building.
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, I did have kind of a vision, but I'll be honest, it was her idea. I wasn't opposed to it though. So I have an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. They're both boys.
Okay.
And they're amazing, and I'm raising them in my fashion. And they're doing pretty well. They're pretty healthy and all that. So they don't use the sauna that much, but I do take my eldest, the 8-year-old, into the sauna. He can do about 10 minutes. I actually take the 3-year-old in as well, just for like 4 or 5 minutes. And he actually likes it. I've got this cute little photo of him, sitting in front of it. He's such a little sweetheart. But both of them use the photon right when they wake up and also after dark. So I have tons of them, right? But I have one in my living room right at the edge of the couch. And my 8-year-old, as soon as he wakes up in the morning, he perches on the edge of the couch and flicks on the photon, and it's shining on his body and his face. And that's like his wake up routine, really every day. And they both kind of use it. And so we just have it on. It's also used, after dark. You don't want to have blue light, but you want to have some light to hang out and chill. So you can use just that. It's actually enough to read with. And it's really just really beneficial for everybody. You have shorter durations and more constrained use with children because they're smaller and their bodies heat up quicker. So, and they of course need to be supervised. And there's a few use recommendations for that, but essentially they need the same thing we need. And so do dogs and cats. They all have mitochondria. They all benefit from this. So people who, veterans who have service dogs, they bring their dog in the sauna and they use it with them. And there's tons of, we have a whole highlight on Instagram for pet stuff if you want to see all the pets. But we
saw
all
that.
we crave it.
I was interested.
It's just this light you crave, and it's interesting. Humans have incredible constitution. We can deal with a lot of stress and a lot of BS and just keep going, and just not fall over. That's one of our evolutionary advantages over, any other animal. A human can outrun anything on Earth long distance because we just have endurance and also our bodies too. But what happens is we get accustomed to the stresses we're around, and then they become chronic, and we don't even notice them, although it is a burden on us. We're not necessarily consciously aware of it so much. But when you introduce like this light into your life and you start using it a lot, and then you don't have it, you really notice, you really feel it. And for me, like right now, we're doing this with video. So I always set up the big projector lights to get a lot of white light. So, I'm well lit. So I have these huge fluorescent blue light bulbs blasting my face. And if this photon light wasn't on, I probably couldn't handle it very well. Even when we do our Instagram live, we use those studio lights too. And they, once you develop a sensitivity for it, it's really jarring how toxic this stuff is. And I can feel it too. Like I have the Faraday product that has it's So our upgraded sauna has a stainless steel radiation shielding liner in it. And you can feel it when you go in. It's a subtle thing, but it's like quiet to the senses. It's like this It's like what you used to have when you went out camping. There's just nothing and nowhere, and there was no cell phone signal. And so if you're inundated with all these stresses from all these different sources all day long, as we all are, you start to forget about them. But your body is not, and it's damaging your body.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, because my partner and I, we were just talking about this, how, wow, we remember back in the day, when we were like ignorant teenagers and we would just eat crap, like eat whatever we wanted. And nowadays it's like we eat really clean, especially now. I'm done with sugar I'm just done. It's just so toxic, I'm like, I made this decision. It was like this internal decision recently. I used to fight it so much. It's like, oh, I just want like a dark chocolate, and now I'm just, I asked myself, what do I want, Oh, longevity, sustainability, and I want to feel good. Does this make me feel good long term? No, it really doesn't. So I'm done with it. It's like zero cravings. But we were talking about how, why can't we just eat this, one thing? After you eat it, you feel like such crap. And I was talking, and then I had this conversation with my friend who's a chiropractor. And she's like, well, it's like, you wouldn't put crap into a Ferrari, right? You wouldn't put 87 gas into a Ferrari. It's the same thing with our bodies. Like, you really notice the difference when you go back. Like, you notice it, you feel it if you're in tune with your body, because there are a lot of people that are unaware, and because you look at people that eat like crap all the time, and they're going, right, they've adapted to the stress, they've adapted to this lifestyle, and you look at them, like sometimes I look at them and I'm always almost like envious of the ignorance, because I'm like, you can just eat and drink whatever you want, and you're going all day long, like 15 hours. Like, I can't do that. I'll crash from like one candy bar.
Yeah. I completely sympathize with you there. I have, many people around me. You're like, how could you continue to eat there and do that? And you look okay, but you realize that they're actually not okay, and it's not sustainable. And it's cool to do that for a year or two or whatever, 5 years or 10 years. But if you talk about diseases of civilization, the number 2 killer of Americans is cancer. And the number 5 killer of Americans is autoimmune disease. You don't live with it, now you die of it. We have a very real problem here, and it's not. You can't blame it on one thing. Yeah, it's a combination of factors, But one of the primary factors in the development of the diseases is definitely what you're eating, and we're designed to eat natural things, and we're designed to eat more. We started out in the trees eating berries and stuff, but we kind of went, as we kind of transitioned to running, being land walkers, we shifted to all meat diet to provide more energy more easily from a single source. And we've really evolved in that vein for a long time, such that I know vegetarians don't like this, but we're more designed to be carnivore than anything else, in a nose to tail carnivore type fashion. And it's okay to eat vegetables, but those are clearly, from an evolutionary standpoint, I think more of a survival food, where we couldn't get meat because, if you killed an animal, you basically got everything your body needed nutritively, and a lot more bang for your buck, like calorie for calorie or bite for bite. But we don't eat like that at all anymore. And I don't actually prescribe it. I eat more of a Wallace protocol diet, so I eat a lot of cooked vegetables. Mm-hmm. It's not like I'm only eating meat at all, but it's. I think the biggest emphasis is to just stay away from the middle of the supermarket. Yeah, the GMO stuff, anything that's created out of synthetic crap, basically. Yeah, and real food goes rotten really fast, exactly. And that's good. They have this weird milk. I was buying milk the other day. This is crazy. I was buying milk the other day, and there was one. It was like I was in the organic section. One of them, the expiration date was 2 weeks from now, which made sense to me. Okay, I'll get that. But there was another couple of the big national brands. I won't name them, but their expiration dates were 5 weeks from now. Yeah. And I was like, how is that possible? Some kind of new ultra pasteurization method, but milk doesn't do that. Milk doesn't work like that.
That seems sketchy.
You don't even do.
Doesn't it seem sketchy?
I mean, we personally just like won't say completely cut out, but like I don't crave dairy anymore. When I was pregnant, I was like goat cheese like all day long, nonstop. That's all I wanted. Goat cheese, pregnant and after. But now it's like there's just no craving for it at all. But there's something I remembered what I wanted to say to you earlier, because you were talking about the doctors in the white coat, like being the priest, and your family, they're doctors. So I'm curious, actually, do they know your viewpoint, and do they agree with you?
My mother was some of the inspiration for me being here now. She was always a general practitioner. She's still in practice. She switched to doing very alternative stuff like when I was like 12. She actually stopped writing prescriptions and when I was in middle school and started doing nutritional balancing and acupuncture, and now she does ozonology and all kinds of crazy stuff like stem cell. But she was the only provider of alternative medicine in Great Falls, and there was so much furor when she left because people were so upset because she was the only provider and no one else was offering anything like that. So she's always been on my side, kind of angel on my shoulder, supporting me in all of this, for sure. And she actually, I've actually benefited from many of her, the therapies that she uses. Like if I get a tick bite or something, I inject it with ozone. And this one time I put a huge framing nail through my hand in a remodel project here at the old shop, like a huge framing nail, like all the way through my hand. And it was just, and it went all the way in and all the way out, like immediately. It was just, it was really disgusting. And I was in shock. And instead of going to the hospital and getting antibiotics and tetanus shots and all that, I went to her. She injected it with ozone bag, ozone IV a little bit, and then got another treatment the next day. Boom, done. No antibiotics, no tetany. Wow. I was totally fine. And so that's just an example of like there's stuff out here that has very little, even no side effects. It's very effective. And she was really on the forefront of a lot of that. So she's been a huge inspiration for me. Definitely contrast that with my father. Father is a dyed-in-the-wool allopathic radiologist, now retired for a long time, and he's an incredibly well-educated, very good rhetorician, very good at arguing his side. Kind of one of those guys that doesn't admit he's wrong easily, and I get so much from that. I get so much drive from him. And I'm so thankful that he's supported me and loved me and been there for me. But in this instance, he definitely is a contrast, and he's definitely opposed to it. No longer, because finally he started in the last 5 years or 8 years, kind of using some of these alternative therapies on himself, including my mother's nutritional balancing, and his hair started growing back better. And he kind of was dealing with weight issues, and he got through a lot. He had a huge improvement in his health by using all this crazy natural stuff. But he was like, "Oh, fine, Bonnie." My mom's name's Bonnie. He's, "Oh, fine, Bonnie. I'll try it. Fine." And it was only when it worked on him was he willing to consider it seriously. and now he's kind of come around a little bit, but he's still very much in the Pasteurian mindset of the problem is the pathogen, not the host. Yeah. Who cares about nutrition? Who cares about what the humans do? We need to stop the diseases at the door. And that's kind of has a tie-in with today and what's going on today with COVID.
Yeah.
But it was good to have that because he was skeptical. Mm-hmm. And even in the business venture, he's like, "What do you think? I mean, okay, 5 or 10, 15 saunas, but when are you going to get over this? Like, it's like, I'm not sure it's a good business idea, but maybe it is, but and how he provided some skepticism to the concept that forced me to dive into the science really deeply to be able to argue my case to him and to others. And so that dichotomy was great for this entire effort. But definitely I grew up with, the original mindset that the doctors know everything. Doctors are smarter than everybody else. They say you do. And all this alternative stuff is kind of quackery.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's just, it's just not well marketed. You know, the allopathic care has really good marketing. The pharmaceutical companies have really good marketing, and we don't. I mean, my website's all right, but the entire growth of SaunaSpace and our success has hinged on people using it and liking it. You know, genuine, like, free market capitalism, where you get it, you like the product, you recommend it to your friend, and it's grown organically. I've never had a TV ad, a video ad. I've never had, up until like last year, I didn't have any big endorsements or anything. It was just a slow but steady acceptance by the market that this is actually a better sauna product. And now with the Photon, this is like a whole new thing. And, you know, in spite of the market challenges, in spite of the sauna industry, if you look at it, there's hundreds of actors. There's a bunch of big dinosaur companies that have huge sales departments, you know, with all these salesmen. And like I said, we're 35 employees. There's only 4 people who work in our office, including me, and 2 customer service and my executive assistant. That's it. We don't have the bandwidth to do anything else. And we're actually doing well this way because we're using, you know, modern means of communicating and connecting with our customers. And Instagram is amazing for that. But just all of it has been in spite of the market conditions. I've totally came in and disrupted the market, and you know, I don't know where this goes and where it ends, but it seems to be going pretty well right now.
Yeah, I wanted to commend you on your logo as well, because it's very simple. I really love your logo, and I wanted to at least throw that out there, because I know that you are truly kind of ground up, and you started everything yourself, and including kind of creating all of that in terms of marketing, logo, branding, all of that stuff is on your shoulders. And so really awesome job with your logo. I love that.
Well, thank you. It's actually not the original logo.
Is it not?
That's the updated logo. The original logo, let's
see the original.
You have a business card? Oh my God, I've got it. Check it out. The original logo was, so cool. This is the lamp. And the original light panel had 3 lamps. So it's like, oh, cool, SaunaSpace, and the A's can be the lamps, and I'll make a little spirally thing, and it'll look like an A, but it'll be the lamp. And then the problem with that was, you know, the bias, the internal bias, the built-in bias of being from the inside, and me not understanding anything about marketing and communication for the sale of products. The logo that I made was a literal representation of the product. And what I wanted the logo to be was a representation of the experience. Mm. And so I had a little help with a graphic designer, but we did a lot of iteration back and forth, and we decided to go with this like double S eternity symbol, because that's what we're selling. We're selling an experience of eternal life, basically, and of eternal rejuvenation. And this also, the original logo, which we switched to using just one of these to kind of go to a square dimensional logo, just the A. Mm-hmm. It's really powerful, actually. This is in Hindu, this is a very strongly grounded symbol. And it's actually really close to the Peruvian national flag, the Peruvian nation's actual national logo, I think. So it has a lot of strength to the logo, but it was just way too literal. Mm. And, you know, now it's not. Now it's much more symbolic of the experience. But that's like that's all that stuff. I definitely have a lot of help now, and I have people that I'm delegating to and are helping me in teams and stuff. But that's what one message that I wanted to get out to people, if they're listening to this. And the message is that you don't need formal training to do anything. You definitely need some drive and a lot of hustle and a lot of, you know, sacrifice and so forth, and a lot of man hours, and also a little luck helps, a little luck. But you don't need formal training to do anything. I'm not trained in business. I never went to business school. I didn't grow up with a business mentality. My parents were doctors. we didn't despise business, but my parents, that there was no business acumen really at all. And I was able to do this because I wouldn't accept no. And I was willing to, even with my ego and all my ego problems, continually remind myself, hey man, be humble. There's so many people around you. They know so much better. Somebody's already figured out this aspect of business and that. And to draw on those resources and to do it, it can be done. So you can still manufacture stuff here in America. You can still start a business here. And you can do it like all on your own, actually, if you can kind of just drive and be confident and go for it. I got my small business loan on my own by just basically, I made my own website in the beginning. So the beginning story, it's really funny. I got this guy's like, well, this doctor who wrote the book, Dr. Wilson, said, hey, I'll endorse you. But you got to offer a really affordable sauna. And I was like, holy cow, cool. This fixer-upper stuff sucks anyway. And so I made my own website and I got my own merchant gateway and I incorporated SaunaSpace. And in 1 month, I went from making 5 saunas a year to making like 5 or 6 saunas a month. And it just, that's kind of, how it started. And I didn't know anything, but I knew what I wanted. I had a vision for what I wanted. And then each challenge that I came against, I soaked in and absorbed and reached out to all the resources I had and kind of figured it out. So in the first 6 months, I made enough money that when I went to the bank, they didn't consider me a startup. They considered me an existing business. And I had my models of a now obsolete frame design and this light guard design. It's like this steampunk looking can-shaped light guard. I had a little model of that I hand welded, and I didn't know what income and projections was or balance sheet. These were all really foreign. This is all foreign language for me. And I reached out to my accountant though, or that was actually my mom's accountant. And I said, I need one of these things. And she's like, okay, but you need to take care of the mission, the business plan part. And so I made an income and projections and a business. I followed a business plan by that guy, that Asian guy who's one of the original Apple investors. Forget, but he's got like a business plan template. And I went and I argued for this loan, and it was crazy. They didn't have, this is Missouri. They don't know anything about sauna here. These bankers were looking at me. They're like, lights, sauna. I mean, who's going to buy this, dude? Where's your market? Where's this going? And they were skeptical, but at the end of it, the old man looked at his younger colleague and said, let's go, let's do it. And so they approved me. And then they called me up 2 days later and said, the old man's retiring. Karen is the new business loan, the new manager of the small business office. And you're going to have to come in and give your presentation again. So I got my models back up. I went all back in, all over again. And I was approved. And then in the middle of the loan process, I realized that I couldn't do all this from like the coffee shop and just manage all this outsourced production design and kind of have this office life. I had to control everything and vertically integrate in order to achieve this totally novel product, which turned out to be, totally novel design, production infrastructure, everything. As far as I'm concerned, the company is very novel in its framework and the systems we use. And so in the middle of the loan process, I said, well, guys, I need 2.5 times as much money as I asked for, because I need to buy this fancy robot and this laser engraver, and I need a bunch of working capital too to train up some people. And they're like, okay, because it turns out, I didn't know at the time, because I had exported 4 saunas in that first 6 months abroad, they all got shipped to England. I was considered an exporter. So my small business loan was actually a small business export loan, which means the underwriting for the bank is much higher. And I actually turned out that I got the first small business export loan that a company in Missouri had gotten in like 25 or 30 years. Wow. Because no one exports anything. But all of these things, they seem, in the moment, they seem almost impossible. Like I can't, this is just too much of a hurdle. But in retrospect, it was all possible, and it was all, you know, your future is what you make of it. And really nothing's impossible within reason. And you don't need the background for it. You don't need the training necessarily. You just need to be, you know, open, willing to learn, and never give up.
Yeah, I love your grit and I love your resourcefulness. I think that's going to create a lasting business for you in whatever you do moving forward. So I love that story, Brian. And we always ask people about their most vulnerable moment in life, whether that be within your business or within your life that kind of changed who you are. And I think you've already touched on a lot of those moments, but if you want to pinpoint time in your life that you were the most vulnerable, that you were kind of ripped open at your core, and kind of go through that for us.
Yeah, I mean, there are many points, definitely when, you know, that moment when I got to Spain and I realized that I had nobody and nobody was backing me, and what do I do? Do I quit? Do I go back to America, or do I do this? And for me, that was a really intense moment. But also that moment of vulnerability with regard to the bankruptcy. Basically, I got to a point where I was running out of money in the business, and I had developed all these crazy production, projects and product ideas, and it was all really exciting, really cool. But like anything else, I was just kind of focusing on the fire at the time, and go back, work at production, and then work on some front end stuff, go back to production, and then work on the sales. And I got to this point where I didn't have any money, and I tapped out. I actually got a working capital loan from PayPal Capital, tapped that out. I got an additional line of credit with my bank, maxed that out. I had an incredible amount of debt at this point in 2016. And that wasn't the moment where I mentioned before I borrowed some money from my mom. That was the first bankruptcy. I'm referring to the second point where I almost went bankrupt. So inventory levels are really high. I've got, over 20 employees at that point, and every single cash reservoir is tapped out and done. And I'm looking at it and seeing like, I'm not going to be able to pay the payroll in 10 days. And I was getting really emotional, but I wanted to still demonstrate, confidence and leadership to everybody. So I wasn't telling anybody that. I wasn't even telling necessarily my wife that. I mean, I was giving her indications and stuff, never hiding anything, but just I was ashamed of it. I was ashamed that I had come this far and I was about to fail after 4 years of doing this and kicking ass in so many ways and so many satisfied customers. And here I was like 10 days away from failure. So that was one of the most vulnerable points in my life, and very much more than the points in my childhood, because in my childhood, it was just kind of me. At this point in 2016 or whatever, I had the families of 24 employees depending on me. I created all those jobs. I feel amazing about them, super proud of that. But I was about to throw it all in the gutter, not due to my own fault, just whatever, the universe, it wasn't going to happen. And it was one of the most vulnerable moments in my life, definitely. And the shame with that, and kind of the humiliation of the failure and the public failure, it was really tough. But I have a nice ending to the story. So the ending is that I went to the Bulletproof conference. You guys familiar with that? It's a pretty cool biohacking conference. So I went to that conference, inventory high, cash gone, about to go bankrupt. I already scheduled and paid, and everything was lined up to go to the conference. And I went there, and I'm sitting at the booth, and this guy, Dr. Mercola, walks up. He's a pretty famous doctor in alternative health. And he's like, yeah, I heard about this. I want to talk to you. And he starts grilling me on questions. And I'm pretty well read in it and what I'm doing. And so we started to argue the science, and it became heated. And it was this, and then I was like, I vehemently, though politely, disagreed with him because he was misunderstood in the things he was saying about the spectrum, about whatever. And he basically at some point walked away from the booth, and I was like, oh my God, I just ruined my chance to get like the biggest endorsement ever. I can't believe I just blew that. And that was, and the bankruptcy was already kind of looming right behind all that. Well, long story short, he comes back later, says, thank you for changing my mind. He took a picture of my slide. He's like, I get it now. You're right, man. I was wrong. And he goes up on the stage and mentions us. And then that was the beginning of a wonderful relationship where he eventually was willing to try out a prototype of the then new conceptual Faraday concept. And after that, he's like, yeah, I really like this, but I can't be corporate, was saying I can't endorse things and so forth. And I was like, well, that sucks. He, one of the most famous doctors in the world is using the product and can't say anything about it. But he ended up inviting me to do a video podcast, which you can look up on YouTube now. And we talked about it, and it was an amazing podcast. But essentially meeting him and having additional exposure brought this new windfall that led to just a domino effect in the industry. And now I'm at where I'm at now, where like the founder of Twitter uses the product, and there was this New York Times article last year that was our first press mentions we had was last year. And so in that 10-day period, I went from the valley to boom, back in the peak, and it gave new fuel to the fire. And I got to the point where I am now, where I don't have any business loan anymore. And I still have, loans and stuff that we use from time to time because we're in manufacturing, but it was a nice ending to the story. I was just sitting there kind of like hoping and dreaming this is going to work. This is going to be something that comes up, and something came up and it worked out.
Awesome. That's a really nice story. And because you're mentioning, people that maybe have come into your life out of luck or fate or whatever it may be, I always like to ask people if you have any recommendations on books or what you're reading, what you've most gifted in terms of books or any type of content that you would recommend for our listeners.
Well, I'm going to bring up something that's like totally out of the blue. We talked a lot about business stuff and all that. I would recommend, I'm going to look it up. It's a French philosopher, excuse me, a French philosopher named René Guénon. And you can look him up. He was around in the kind of early 20th century. He was, he was into all the mysticism and stuff in the 20s before World War II came around, after World War I. And he eventually moved to Egypt and like lived out the principles that he preached. But he talked about the problem. His most famous book is called The Crisis of the Modern World. But he has like 12 or 13 books he's written. So I would recommend people read The Crisis of the Modern World. It's an interesting perspective that's outside of academia. It's not non-academic. It's just he talks about how in academics they're all using Descartesian logic, which is limited to the five senses. And in fact, we have super rational knowledge. We actually have knowledge that we know, but it's not rational. But it's not irrational. It's in fact super rational. And rational is only a part of all of knowledge. And the problem with the world nowadays, has to do with quantity versus quality. And I think people can really identify with it. But academia doesn't really have an answer to him. You don't really see this studied much in academia, but one of the most mind-blowing books I've ever read was The Crisis of the Modern World. Really trippy stuff. It really gives you a different perspective of belief versus knowledge, and that which is rational is not all that's out there. And so like when you have those gut feelings, you know it's right. You know this is the way it needs to be. That's not an instinct per se. That's not an emotion. That's a knowledge that you have. It's knowing. And so he presents this just a very interesting philosophy that really shocked me, and highly recommend it to anybody else. His other books too, like The Rain and Quantity, and he has some books where he deep dives into Hindu doctrines and Islamic doctrines. He actually he was a French guy, but he converted to Sufism, which is Islamic mysticism, kind of like Kabbalized to Judaism. But he wrote all these books when he was in Egypt, living out this peaceful life where he was in tune with the universe and not engaging in anything that's profane. Everything that we're talking about right now is all profane. It's all knowledge of this world. It's not real knowledge per se. It's not, knowledge of the totality of things. It's not super intuitional knowledge. It's just knowledge of things that you can Google. And if you can Google it, well, why do you need to know it and remember it? What about the most important knowledge that we need? And just a very interesting life, very interesting character.
Thank you for recommending that. I always love asking people that question because we get a different answer every single time. And I'm one of those people, and Svetlana too, we love to read, and we keep adding these books to our list. And I've got my running order on Amazon now, trying to gather up all these reads. So thank you for that. And thanks for coming on, Brian. I want to give you a chance to also shout out all of your social media, your website, where everyone can go and find you, find your products, and kind of give you an opportunity to tell everyone where they can find you, where you're most active.
Yeah, absolutely. Sauna.space. So the website is sauna.space. We're super active on Instagram. All of our social handle is all at SaunaSpace. I do an Instagram live now twice a week on SaunaSpace, and you can see previous episodes on Instagram TV. So that's all at SaunaSpace on Instagram. Facebook, I guess it's still alive, and we still double post everything there. So you can find us on Facebook, but it's all about Instagram now, and also Twitter too. Got to give a shout out to our awesome supporter, but mostly Sauna.space. You'll find the product, a lot of articles and in-depth research that I've written. Some of the stuff is a little dated, but for those who like to deep dive into certain things like skin or performance enhancement and the rest, it's all there, and the product's there, and you can see it there. That's it. It's simple. Sauna.space and at SaunaSpace, wherever you go.
Awesome. Well, I love my photon light, and I'm definitely looking into the rest of your products. So I appreciate the connection and coming on. And this podcast is all about providing our listeners with ways that not only they can improve health and wellness, but also peak performance in life and in business, and really an all-around kind of completing the circle type of knowledge, so that they can go out and be peak performers in all areas of their life. So I appreciate you coming on. You embody so many of those things, and I love your entrepreneurial journey, hitting rock bottom multiple times, having the grit and the resilience and resourcefulness to continue growing, and we're cheering you on. We love your products, and thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Jessica, Svetlana. Wonderful. That was a great talk.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Whew.
Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.